All right. Good morning, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Desert, excuse me, and friends all over our beloved planet. It's Reverend Charles W. Hall, Associate Minister here, along with my good eye mite. It's my man, my brother, Jeffon Seeley.
Morning.
Namaste. Good to see you.
You as well.
I think we did that the first week at the top of the show, but we hadn't done it. Well, we do it at some point throughout the show.
Right.
At some point throughout the show, we do the namaste, and we also do the air quotes at least once. So we gotta bring that on. So namaste, my brother.
Those quotes are trademarked in this segment.
That's right. We do them. Good to see you, my friend. How are you this week? How are you? It's a great Tuesday morning. How's the smoke over there? How's your family? Give us a little update on your life before we dive in.
Yeah, things are clearing up. Yeah, the smoke is slowly starting to dissipate, though the smog is still here.
Yep.
Yeah, everything's been well. It was my uncle's birthday. They're twins, and so was able to see them this weekend, and that's always just a great experience. You know, it's really fascinating for us to reflect on all the people throughout our lives who have added something to our experience. And
yes,
if we have the opportunity to still be able to celebrate our life or their lives while they are here, walking, living, breathing, that is a very important thing. And for those who are no longer here on the planet with us, you can still feel the love and compassion and support. So I was really trying to be present. We went golfing and time flew by.
nice.
As did my ball fly right, but I was okay.
Hey, excuse me. Happens to the best of us, brother. I mean, I've been playing golf a long time, and getting that golf ball to do what you want off that little club face, it's not the easiest thing to do. Golf has got to be. You don't really necessarily have to be in shape. You can play it at any age, but it's the hardest game in that to make that little golf ball do what you want it to do. It's very difficult. And there's nobody trying to stop you from doing it. It's just you.
Yeah.
Just you. Right on. Let's see. Black.
Yeah.
Chapter 11. What a chapter, huh? Yeah. And we continue to say that each week. It was an eye-opener for me. I actually had some humble revelations reading this chapter because he was definitely talking to me. You know, it was interesting in the same way that he was in the editor of the paper's office and got called out, and inwardly, you know, he shared his inner dialogue about that whole process. I noticed the same inner dialogue, you know, like kind of an FU, but you're right. And that's sometimes how growth happens, you know, because I just get protective of my beliefs and my constructs, and they keep me safe, and they're comfortable, and they're familiar. I think more than anything, they're familiar.
Yes.
And then someone comes along and shakes them up. And what I love about it also, Jeffon, is it doesn't have to be someone sitting right in front of you. It can be someone's idea that we're reading in a book, right? And so I was stirred this week, and I'm grateful for it. And I've grown, and I'm grateful to say that. So yeah, what a chapter for real.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we'll touch upon this, but in the book also, I had to kind of come face to face with this, as he puts it, the racist idea of this powerlessness.
Yep.
That I felt or have believed that a variety of people experience, that completely pulls away or strips away the individual power, as we often say, principle that we've come into this earth possessing. And that's something that I've really it just opened up this door that I need to continue to explore in my own.
Yep. Yeah, he calls it the powerless defense. And then he unpacks it for like basically the second half of the chapter, maybe the second two-thirds, or the second two-thirds, the last two-thirds of the chapter. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So as usual, you have some stuff prepared for us. Do you want to lead the way, my friend?
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you who are chiming in, as always, if you have comments or things you would like to share, insights, questions, please be willing to do that via chat. We always enjoy your feedback. And for those of you who are like, well, what are we even talking about? It is this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi. And we are on chapter 11, which means this is the 11th time that we've had the opportunity. Well, actually more than that, but this is at least the 11th time we've had the chance to come together in this capacity. So as always, I have a few slides that I've prepared and that I will share in kind of talking points. And again, this is just material or fodder that has been gathered from the book itself. Okay, so chapter 11. Are you there, Rep. Charles?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Yep.
It's Black. So as always, he begins with a quick definition as to what the concept around this particular chapter is going to be about, and it's the powerless defenses Rep. Charles just mentioned, and that is the illusion, please say that word.
Illusory.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I promise I can read. Concealing, disempowering, and racist idea that Black people can't be racist because Black people don't have power. Before we kind of turn into this, this is something that I have often said when people ask me, well, what about racism as it relates to Black people? And I would default to this idea. And when I kind of unpack where are these beliefs from, it is from the opinions that another person has said or that I've heard, and I internalized without really allowing myself to critically think upon these things that I was believing as truth. And that is the belief of this powerlessness. I think I said that to Dr. Joe, one of the first conversations that him and I had a few months back after the George Floyd incident, where he asked the question about racism and how if Black people can be racist. And I think I defaulted to this saying that, well, they don't have the power to promote institutional oppression. And as we see in this chapter, it kind of pulls back the curtain as to why that idea that I once stood behind may not actually be true, which is humbling to admit that. And it also shows this continuous growth that we as humans experience, that some of the beliefs and opinions and things that we've internalized as absolutes may require some deeper critical thinking to be able to illuminate some of the blind spots that are within ourselves.
Yes. Can you hear me, Jeffon?
I can hear you.
You can't, but am I frozen?
Nope.
Oh, I'm not? Oh, I'm frozen on my end. Reverend Lori in the producer's booth, if there's anything we can do about that, that'd be great. What I'm seeing is myself frozen, but that's okay, as long as you can hear me. That's the same thing, Jeffon here. And I thought I was dignified as a white person saying, well, how is it possible for a Black person to be racist toward white people after all the stuff that's happened? And I was dignified in that. And the way he unpacks it makes a lot of sense. It's the idea that someone's powerless. And he also illuminates in here too that white people by far are more powerful in the systems and constructs that we have, but Black people are not powerless.
Yes.
And that's something we have to wake up to.
Limited power, but
limited power.
Yeah. Yes.
Not powerless. And that's in line with principle, right?
Of course.
That was one of the bigger wake ups too. Like, where in my consciousness would I think that anything is powerless?
Yes.
If it's all comes from an energy source, and while we have made gargantuan mistakes as far as policy and system and these types of things, and from a place of limited or unawakened consciousness, there can't be anything that's powerless. And that was a big wake up.
Yeah, it's a humbling practice for us to look throughout our life and recognize all the times that we believe that the power was out there versus the power that's dwelling in here.
Yep.
The power that is in here, because we are by way of that infinite nature, the divine essence, our power is without bounds. I mean, we are boundless. We have the ability to assist in the co-creation of reality, whether that's a small speck that we're choosing to do or in a large, impactful way. So
yeah, and he really unpacks that in the second half of the chapter too, as far as the ways that that we all contribute to it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me, Jeffon, was thinking, what can I really say? about this chapter, because I can never have the experience in this life of a Black person or any person of color. So I was really wrestling like that. What possibly could my contribution this week be that could make any sort of, well, just a substantive contribution? And the biggest one is to wake up to the idea that somehow white folk are the biggest contributors to it and by far have the most power, but that we all have power somehow. And to wake up to that idea. So I really wrestled this week with this, and I'm grateful for it. You know, just it's a good wrestling match always is invigorating.
Yeah. I totally agree. I totally agree. And your contribution is always valuable, because I feel the two of us able to bring our various perspectives, people can relate to it, and then they also can put their own interpretation upon it, which is the most important. It's not just what you and I say. It's really how the individual internalizes it and recognizes ways in which they can continue to grow and expand.
Yeah. Amen.
So with that said, oh, FYI, so I'm going to say the N word, which I often don't say. I choose not to say it. I'm just going to say it one time at the beginning slide here. But I'm not going to continue to say it, because for me, it's just not a word that I choose to say often. So I just want to kind of put that out there, okay? So with that being said, on the page 137, Rev Charles kind of chatted about this. He's talking with the editor at the newspaper that he was interning at. And the editor basically, from the author's standpoint, Dr. Kendi, he said that the editor separated himself from the N, or the niggers, ERS, and racialized them and looked down upon them. So he wasn't focused on the police brutality or the officer that was profiling him, but he was upset that they looked at him as if he was one of them. And so from this standpoint, we are not seeing and treating Black, this is what he says on page 138. We are not seeing and treating Black people as individuals, some of whom do bad things. Remember, we always talk about individuals instead of attaching everybody to this particular group behavior. And we've created a group identity of that N-word that in turn created a hierarchy, as all race making does. And remember, so in this particular portion of this chapter at the beginning there, he's talking about people such as Chris Rock in his special, where he's, talking about the various groups of Black people and associating those, the N-words, with individuals who are less than the Black excellence, and therefore kind of teasing off of it. And in that particular concept or conversation, he mentioned that Chris Rock actually began quit doing that stand-up when he recognized the laughter that was coming from white folks. And also simultaneously, which I think I heard Dave Chappelle say when he walked away from doing his thing, he wanted to stop putting Black people down and laughing at the misery of Black people, creating this hierarchy within this racial group and laughing at those individuals who they then or may look down upon.
Yeah. Yep. And I fear I may have done that last week, when I brought up, the whole idea of that skit that Dave Chappelle did, when he was a Black Klansman,
right?
That whole idea. So, again, it's a big week for me. I'm humbled, but I'm grateful to be humble, and I stand in my humility, and what are we doing here if not to learn and grow? I feel like this chapter more than anything has brought me to the edge of myself so far in this book, of being personally challenged. So yeah,
that's an important thing. And I feel that at times as individuals, we often will stay in this small little cocoon of comfort because of the familiarity that circle of comfort brings. But we all know, particularly as we think upon principle or science of mind philosophy, when we step beyond that perceived known into the unknown is where we recognize more of who and what we are.
Yes.
And when we do that, when we step towards the edges of our known reality, when we take a step into the proverbial unknown, that foundation that we once knew may start to shake a little bit. Hence the reason why most people will choose to stay within their small little cocoon of comfort, because it's familiar. And I think the Buddha has a saying that says most people prefer their suffering because because it is familiar, and the unknown prompts this fear that causes them to simply stay in the known and suffer.
Mm.
That was a butchered quote, but something in that.
Hey, a butcher provides us food.
Yeah.
Butcher away.
So with that being said, he kind of takes this a step further. And he's saying we, as in the context of a vast majority of people, we did not place, and I kind of put these all together, loud people who happen to be Black into an interracial group of loud people.
Yes.
We categorize them as loud N-words. We did not place negligent Black parents into an interracial group of negligent parents. We called them negligent N-words. We did not place Black criminals into an interracial group of criminals again. We did not place lazy Blacks into an interracial group of lazy people, all of which, if we did that, is to be anti-racist. To not do that, or to capture the whole essence of the group by way of that one individual or many individuals' behavior, is to identify with those particular racist ideas that he's been expressing throughout this book thus far.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it'd be more powerful in this conversation, Jeffon, if you actually said the word?
I mean, I have no problem to say the word. I just,
You know what I mean? Just to bring it home. I I think there's something about it though, because it actually, my experience of it is there's a and I know we had a little bit of a different conversation about this before we came on air, but I think in the spirit of authenticity, if you want to, I mean, let's do it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's your call, but he's making a particular point about that word.
he is. He
right?
really is. And that word has, and that's another thing that in this current culture that we're in, it's like that word is a part of the history of America.
Yep.
It was used throughout the history of this country. The niggers, savages, beasts. That was a word that would, and it still has a thread in our consciousness today. So as he says that, loud people who happen to be Black, we didn't place loud people who happen to be Black into an interracial group of loud people as anti-racist. We racialized the negative behavior and attached loudness to niggers.
Yep.
Like white racist as Black racist. We did not place negligent Black parents into an interracial group of negligent parents as anti-racist. We racialized the negative behavior and attached negligent parenting to niggers. Like white racist as Black racist, and on and
Yep.
on.
Yep.
And I think I would dare to say, I mean, I growing up in Utah, I heard a lot of people, I think most everybody has said that word at least once. And maybe even not verbally to somebody, but you've thought it, or you've heard somebody in your little circle say it who maybe shouldn't have said it. And it was a derogatory term.
Derogatory term. And that's what he's saying here in this whole paragraph, and that goes through the middle of page 138. It's not just because I come from a loud family. So that whole, we did not place loud people who happen to be Black into an interracial group of loud people as anti-racist. That's just loud people.
Right.
We racialize the negative behavior. If we could call being loud a negative behavior, if so, then my family is negative. I mean, deep into the negative, because we're loud and we're all over each other.
Yeah.
Attach loudness to the N-word, like white racist as Black racist. And he said that white racist, Black racist, same thing, racism. It's racist. It's not, again, it's attributed to the color of your skin and not just how you show up in life.
Right. Right. And for anybody who's thinking, well, Jeffon, you know, in rap music they say that word a lot. And he says in this particular chapter, as I don't know if anybody has listened to Tribe Called Quest, but this was a particular way that individuals in certain pockets of our country, urban centers primarily, have embraced that word as a term of endearment. Yep. So I've heard some people say, well, how can somebody say nigga and then somebody say nigger? And how are those words so different? And I think that it is, to me, it's extremely apparent. And as it relates to rap and hip hop music, that word as a term of endearment is something that it's so interesting how language is, but that ER at the end of it seems to be a very it's hurtful. And the first time that I was ever called a nigger was when I was, I think, 6 years old, playing with the kids in my community where I grew up. And somebody called me and my little sister that. My sister was 3 at the time. The one time that I remember the most was when I walked into a Sunday school classroom when I was about 10 or 11, and the chalkboard said, "No niggers allowed." Now, as a young boy, you internalize this and you know that that is not a term of endearment. But then I heard my uncles, who are African-American, listening to Tupac and listening to, and that word was a completely different meaning. The same way that many words are. But so that word has some personal effects for myself as well.
Understood. We got a question or a comment. A flashback from history, 2007 NAACP held a formal ceremony to bury the N-word, putting it out of our consciousness. Google it. Yeah, well, I don't think it's worked. I mean, I get the sentiment, and I get, again, it's, I don't know how I can, what I know is I'm never going to use the word, ever. I don't use that word. I don't have the right perspective on it. And it's completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I think if we get too caught up in the word during this chapter, that we're going to miss some of the more salient points as well that are being presented here.
I would agree. And
because the chapter wasn't called the N-word.
Yeah.
It's called Black. And I think that he makes a powerful point about that in his chapter called Black.
Yes. And remember, we can learn a lot from history. Burying history or acting as if things didn't happen may not serve our highest and best good. As humans, we can reflect back upon history and recognize the shortcomings of our ancestors or the generations that preceded us or have come before us, and we can learn from them. In the same way that we shouldn't bury the history of the Confederacy, I feel we shouldn't also bury that particular word. While it shouldn't be used just to describe anybody or to describe anyone at all, it's something that was deeply embedded in the fabric of America. Mm-hmm. It was used as a way to put people in their place or make people know that they are not at a certain level of superiority. And people even say it. My friends who are Polynesian, they say it to each other. My friends who are Latinx say it. It's a variety. It's a unique thing.
I saw something this week, some information that there's a growing majority of younger folks, younger generation, that actually they believe the Holocaust was a hoax, that it actually didn't happen. And that's the concern about moving forward, with this type of history. And I'm glad he brings so much history, again, in the second half of the chapter, that if I don't shut up pretty soon, we're never going to get to.
Me too. We're 2 pages in.
What's that?
We're 2 pages in.
We're 2, yeah. That we'll forget those things, and then that's the concern. That's the curse, is that we recreate it. But if we don't keep these things that have happened before us in the forefront of our mind, not to have them happen again, to not have them happen again.
Yeah.
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 All right.
So moving along. So on page 138, we're still there. Felt tremendous anti-racist pride in Black excellence, and then tremendously racist shame in being connected to them. Remember, we're talking about this idea when we feel as if it's a us versus them, we are immediately separating ourselves from this concept of unity. And us versus them is internalizing ideas, and in this particular context, racist ideas, where we have that hierarchy, that racial hierarchy. A large percentage of Black people hold anti-Black racist ideas. And he said, every time I say something is wrong with Black people, I am simultaneously separating myself from them. This is a concept that I feel we all can embrace. Every time we say that there is something wrong with a particular group of people, we simultaneously separate ourselves from them. If we are talking about there is one consciousness and one essence, how could we speak ill about any? Of course, we can find things that people could be doing better, but can we not still see the unity that we share with them, even in the seeming atrocity or suffering that they may be inflicting?
And the difference is saying something wrong is wrong, not opining about what you're noticing or what you're witnessing. He's saying something is wrong.
Yes.
All right.
Somebody said, good point. We shouldn't erase history, but be mindful of the layers of the meaning.
Amen.
Yeah. So moving to this idea of the powerless defense. So powerless defense shields people of color from doing the work of anti-racism since they are apparently powerless. Like every other racist idea, the powerless defense underestimates Black people and overestimates white people. Every single person has the power to protest racist and anti-racist policies, to advance them, or in some small way to stall them. And institutionalized power, systemic power, structural power, is the policy making and managing power of people in groups or individually, which ultimately means, even in some capacity, all of us have the power to stand up against or for something. And as I believe somebody often said, stand for something instead of against something. So what would happen if we stood for anti-racism?
Ernest Holmes said that. Yep.
Any
Go ahead.
thoughts about that particular concept there on page 140, 141?
Sorry, I was Jeffon. I went to the chat for a second.
Oh, yes.
Say it again.
I just said any particular thoughts from your side on this slide or that page 140, 141?
Well, I think it comes back to principle. What we talk about. I mean, there's what we're called to do is to invite principle into our daily lives. And I think it's especially more difficult for people of color, Black and brown people. And I've always, man, here's the thing as a minister too, that I'm confounded by or befuddled by. I want to make sure my vocabulary is right. I don't think confounded is the right word. Befuddled by. Where did principle come into play with the native peoples who were wiped out? What about that? That as a minister, I'm troubled by that. And often I know what I can do now, which is stand as tall as possible, learn as much as possible, and be as awake as possible so that these atrocities don't ever happen again. Same thing with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Same thing with the folks that were affected by Pol Pot in Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge. Same thing that were the people that were affected, by Slobodan Milosevic and the old Yugoslavia. I can't find a way to reconcile that, except that my charge now has to be, I have to be as awake as possible in order for those things to be as even, what did he say? He said, will you bring the slide back up, Jeffon?
Yes.
He said, every single person has the power to protest racist and anti-racist policies, to advance them, or in some small way to stall them. And that has to be the charge that's before me now. And as I look at some of these, grandiose atrocities that have happened, and I can't quite reconcile how principle came into play then, except that there was this people came to power who were asleep and who wielded that power, I guess the same way in this country, same way with slavery. That those that have given their lives, that those that have been killed, murdered because of this being asleep, that those of us that are still awake and aware now have to be as awake and aware as possible so that we can put this to bed and move forward. Mm-hmm. Am I rambling? I hope I'm sharing something that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that I've wrestled with too, is, how can I see principle in many of the atrocities that has impacted hundreds of millions of people.
Hundreds of millions of people.
Throughout history, and are impacting hundreds of millions of people right now.
Yep. Right now. With regards to food, even
water,
like, why does the term food desert even exist?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So we have to be awake. Yep.
We do. Dramatic Stranger said, as a child of the 50s, I remember using the N-word, but not understanding or knowing the real truth of the word. Through my adult life, when I hear the N-word, it makes my heart hurt to hear it. Yeah.
Well,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Amen.
So with that said, moving right along here on page 142, and I have a paragraph that I want to read. Can you see when I move this screen around?
The mouse, the arrow?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I can see the arrow.
Okay. So the truth is, Black people can be racist because Black people do have power, even if limited. There is a saying by Carter G. Woodson, who founded Black History Month: when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. And on page, that reminded me of the Willie Lynch letters that we chatted about a while back. Yep. And then in the middle of the page here, on page 142, I'm going to read this. Right below that saying, or that quote: racist ideas are constantly produced to cage the power of people to resist. Racist ideas make Black people believe white people have all the power, elevating them to gods. And so Black segregationists lash out at these all-powerful gods as fallen devils, as I did in college, while Black assimilationists worship their all-powerful white angels, strive to become them, to curry their favor, reproduce their racist ideas, and defending their racist policies. I mean, I thought that was a very powerful paragraph. I knew you highlighted that. That's why I wanted to read that.
Yep. Very powerful. You know what? The first thing it brought forth for me was parenting as a dad. When you control one, let me put this in the personal. When I control my daughter's thinking, I don't have to worry about her actions. This was humbling for me, man. I don't have to tell her not to stand here or go yonder. She will find her proper place and will stay in it. It broke my heart. I mean, that's what to bring it really right home is like, I do that as a parent to try and not that I'm aware of it in the moment, but control my daughter's mind to make her do, you got to brush your teeth now, you got to have breakfast here, you got to comb your hair, you got to do this and that and the other thing. And how does that take away from and just somebody's free spirit, her free spirit? How does that take away from a human being's freedom, like their sovereignty, their capacity to be? And he teased this up over and over again, all over this. What, he talks about uh, uh, the recorded history of black racists begins in 1526,
Yep.
and goes over that over and over again based on this idea.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so this brought me to my knees. Yeah.
Yeah, what a powerful idea. I mean, think of how many ways in which we've been then controlled in some capacity to do as we think we're supposed to do. Or we don't even, and that then takes it back to this idea of unconscious unawareness, where we're unaware that we're unaware.
Yep.
Yeah.
Word. What else we got?
There's from Ronald, he said, what do we say to people when we see racist behavior? How do I begin the process of taking action by speaking up?
I think the answer's in the question to me. You take action by speaking up, because a lot of people don't. And then see what happens out of that.
I've had to take there's some conversations, even family members who have said some things over the course of the last few months, especially in the climate that we find ourselves in America, where I've tried to talk to them in the past, and it didn't work, and I've had to somehow find this committed detachment where I want to try to be a part of them, recognizing the behavior, but I can't do the work for them. And I think the act of just simply speaking up, or if you're in a group of friends and they say something and letting them know, that's not that does not reflect the true nature of everybody. And to even say that is something that I think we really should hold ourselves from, and not say that anymore. Or if we see somebody, Facebook and things of that sort, that's a place where I do not engage in those conversations.
Nope.
It's not worth the time and energy, at least from my perspective.
Not to air my family's laundry out, but at one time, my grandma's 98. She's going to be 98 next month. And we were at a family gathering a long time ago. So I was married to my ex-wife. And for some reason, my ex-brother-in-law baited my grandma. There's a particular nut, and he held it up, and he said to my grandma, he said, what's this one called? Oh, and my grandma said, oh, that one's called Entos. And my wife's right here, and my wife was black. My wife's right here, and I'd had it. And so I first thing I did was I went out the front door, and in my aunt and uncle's neighborhood, and I screamed the F word as loud as I can. I just had to let some steam out. My cousin came out after me and just kind of, like pat me on my shoulder, and we chatted for just like a minute, and I just kind of went off for a couple of minutes. I went back into the house, and without turning the volume down, said how wrong that was. And that was a hard thing to do in front of my grandma. She's the matriarch of our family. And it was easier in front of some of the other folks that were there. But the bottom line is, I think sometimes, especially in front of people that are our friends, Ronald, if they're really our friends and their loved ones, the shock value shocks people out of things sometimes. Like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
This is not okay. It's time for everybody to wake the F up. And that made a difference. I know it made a difference in that day. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah.
Do we have some more chat coming in? We're not going to get through these slides, are we?
I only have 2 more left.
Oh, okay. You're the boss. You're leading the way. Yep.
They were just asking, how are you able to access chat on Zoom? And Ronald said, I just opened up the chat box and started typing.
Well, there you good, Ronald. Take us all to school, brother. Thank you.
So he's going in to talk about the real black on black criminals. He talks about another voting situation that occurred. I Blackwell was his last name. He was I believe, the state attorney general or
Secretary of State in Ohio. Yep.
African-American man, and did a variety of things to prevent Black people from casting their vote. Surprise, surprise. I think that's been a common reoccurrence in the history of America. And he's saying, you know, Black on Black criminals like Blackwell get away with their racism. Black people will call them Uncle Toms, sellouts, Oreos, puppets, everything but the right thing, which is racist. Stop denying the duality of racist and anti-racist. Important. We can take an accurate accounting of the racial ideas and policies we support. This is something we all can do. We can really be honest with ourselves and ask, in what ways am I supporting racism and racist policies? And in what ways am I supporting anti-racism and anti-racist policies? And as the author said, which I attest to, I've held both racist and anti-racist ideas.
Me too.
I supported both racist and anti-racist policies. And he took it a step further, and this is what you were getting to, Rev Charles, here.
Yep.
He talks about Black on Black criminals, Leo Africanus, who basically was a Moor who was brought into slavery and then kind of was able to free himself by way of telling Pope Leo X what he wanted to hear, that Blacks, Africans in sub-Saharan Africa are beasts and savages and inferior. Sambo, who was in the island of Barbados, also disclosed a plot for a slave revolt, which granted him opportunity. He talked about another individual who was born into Nigerian royalty, was an ivory merchant, and was basically sold into slavery, and again, did everything he could do to put Black people down to gain favor and support from his master. Slave owners often welcomed Black ministers to preach the gospel of Black enslavement, saying that they are the descendants of Ham and cursed. Because of that, they invited that Black on Black criminal activity to continue to sabotage the Black consciousness. He talks about Denmark Vesey, I believe, who had a revolt, planning a slave revolt in South Carolina in 1822, excuse me, I put the wrong date there. And he told everybody, you know, don't tell all the slaves, because some of them will share this with their masters because they want to be seen in good favor. And one of the individuals was told or learned about this, Peter, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He told his master, which then prompted the end of that particular revolt, foiled it. Peter was freed and able to go live in a light community while Denmark was hung. Another individual, William Hannibal Thomas, was directly opposed to Booker T. Washington's thoughts around Black individuals being free. And he did everything that he could to continue to put Black people down. And it goes on and on. He talks about Black police officers. He talks about Black individuals who are in particular places of power within government systems and institutions, in ways in which they continue to perpetuate racist policies with their limited power in those particular institutions or systems. And that seems to be the true Black on Black crime.
I mean, yeah, he goes through, yep. Sorry, Jeffon.
Very revealing, that particular concept.
Well, going through those numbers as well, you know, from politicians to professors, to policemen, all of those things, how those are generally positions of power. And again, the idea is limited power compared to the white power, but there's still power there. And I think one of the words that came out for me about this whole thing, and again, I can't talk about it from a standpoint of race because I can't get it in this context. But the word accountability continues to come up for me. And somehow these people that do, anybody that, and everybody that has power there's an accountability that comes along with it. And I just think it's interesting that he took a chapter out of this book. He took precious real estate out of his book to speak as a Black man about Blacks and the power that we have. It sounds like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
You know, to look, there is power, and how do we want to wield it? And I feel like that's as far as I can talk about it, except each one of us are accountable somehow, and we do have some sort of power.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, I'm thinking when I lived in Atlanta and these seemingly segregated communities that wasn't segregated necessarily by race, but by class. And the way in which I noticed certain people in affluent communities look at those in the projects or in lower communities. And I kind of get that, and I may have done that, participated in these racist ideas by way of living in Redlands and thinking about certain pockets of San Bernardino, which my aunt lives in San Bernardino in one of the most dangerous areas. And to capture or think a particular way about a particular place is to cast it's just not a way to recognize what I stand behind, which is what I say I stand behind, which is unity, divinity, and the infinite essence within all.
What was that? Yep. What was that piece he said, Jeffon? He said that speaks directly to that. That something to the effect of this. As soon as we start othering, we're presenting a racist idea.
Yes.
Or a socioeconomic idea, right? That we're participating with it. And I think that's what I hear you saying right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going back to that slide where he said, I participated in racist and anti-racist ideas. I participated in racist and anti-racist policies. And that's just something that I feel we as humans individually have to recognize internally within ourselves. Maybe, this is a little bit more to Ronald's point there when he said, what can we do to address that? Is to make sure that we begin to rid out those particular things within ourselves. Consciously replacing them with more empowering, equitable, equal ideations, activities, choices, actions, behaviors, all of those things.
Right here first, because then this is what I hear you saying. We take care of business right here. And then as we take care of business right here, we're actually empowered from within to have a different conversation. We're empowered from within to call something out. We're empowered from within to stand up to the bully or the racist idea or whatever it might be, that we actually feel a greater power to do that once we take care of business at home first.
Yeah.
Do we have some more comments that came in?
Annette said, adultism did affect me as a child. Good awareness with your daughter, Rev Charles. I think that's a really, really big point. The way in which we expect kids to act as if they're adults.
Yeah.
Sit down and calm down. No, you don't yell like that.
Yep.
Don't reach for those things.
Raising your voice at me? I don't think so. Yeah. It's the same. Same general idea, right?
Right. So
it's go ahead. Yeah.
No, please.
Well, no, it's just I'm just talking because I have a mouth at this point.
As do I. Let's continue.
All right. Do we have more?
Well, I just had one last thing. This is something that I didn't do, and I don't know if we have done in the past. But I wanted to, instead of like, okay, well, that's the chapter. I wanted to just share a few things that really kind of stirred within my consciousness that I would encourage all of us to perhaps capture one or all of them as we move forward.
Love it.
Release this idea of otherness. Beginning to recognize the ways in which we choose to not, whether consciously or unconsciously, where we choose to not embrace this idea of unity that we share with all of humanity, the planet beneath us, and everything around us. To move towards this idea of a consciousness of anti-racism, recognizing the duality, as he mentioned, that often exists, and beginning to find the areas in which we maybe don't participate in anti-racist ideas or policies or supporting those things. And as we do, making a commitment to equality by way of simply understanding that there is an inherent worth within all people. And how can we begin to call ourselves out when we see ourselves or others as superior or inferior to other folks? To not dismiss the power that we as individuals have, and always recognize that we have the ability to make a difference right where we are. And the difference that we are making in the work that we are doing, or the actions that we follow through on today, send ripples out into the environment that create some type of shift. And so these are just a few things that really stirred in my heart that I wanted to kind of capture and share with everybody. And if it aligns with you, so be it. And if not, these are just some things that really struck a chord within myself.
Love that. Love the homework. Absolutely. Homework and, just awareness work.
Right.
That's a great way to end it. Way to take your game to the next level, my brother.
It's a continuous thing.
Sure is. Love it. I feel complete. How are you? Shed a little tear.
Yeah.
Shared some insight. Been brought to my knees. What's that comment say right there, Jeffon?
As long as there is racism in the world, we'll each have some echo of it within our consciousness. We can to it when it comes up and take the opportunity to work on clearing it out of ourselves. Great closing.
Love it. Love it. Anything else you want to say, my friend?
I think that it's just a continuous reminder that there's work to do within myself. And by no means have I reached some pinnacle of all enlightened awareness. But these books, various New Thought books, I know I was talking with Rev Lori about the book she's reading. There are all these opportunities for us individually to continuously expand and just grow. We live in an infinite realm. We're a part of an infinite essence, which means our growth and potential is infinite in nature. And to stop in this small little circle and say I have it figured out is quite ignorant on my part. Yeah.
And be humble enough to grow and welcome growth. I mean, we're better human beings as we grow. Yeah. We get better at this thing called human. we keep practicing, right? Again, I always bring it back to organized sports. You practice something, you have a coach tells you, hey, you're doing that great. Hey, you need to improve on that. Go work on it. I love it. I got a lot of, hey, you need to improve on that from Dr. Kendi this week. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you all for your willingness to be a part of this. I know Ronald said, listening to both of you brings back memories of being in history or sociology class. And then someone said, thank you both. This was powerful.
Amen. Thank you all. Powerful for us as well. Powerful for me.
Me as well.
Let's see. Couple things to wrap it up here. A couple of announcements. Tomorrow morning is the Sensational Six. Thursday, I am with, Dr. Laura is with our very own Ginny Weissman. She's going to tease her new show called The Higher View, which is going to start October 15th. So it's Dr. Laura on Thursday with our very own Ginny Weissman. And then Friday, we're going to play a little game called Where in the World is Dr. Joe Hooper? We're going to track him down, ask him some questions, see how his life is on his sabbatical, knowing that he'll be back in just under a month. He'll be back middle of October. So we'll get to catch up with him and see how he is, see how Trey is, see if they still love each other after being together every day for 4 months. I'm kidding. I'm joking, of course. But, just have some fun with that. Saturday meditation, Sunday service next week. We're chapter 12 next week.
Yes.
And another lineup of wonderful guests for our daily programming. I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you, Jeffon.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you to everybody out there for your willingness to be with us as we go through this conversation.
Yes, yes. It's a beautiful blessing. And of course, we continue to be so grateful for your financial support and empowerment of our center as we continue to walk through this time. You know what? Let's keep the world moving. We're doing it. Appreciate you. Jeffon, have an extraordinary week, my brother. I know you wish the same for me.
Yes.
Much peace, much love, everybody. Make it best day ever. Peace and love.